Welcome to Newt's World Podcast on the iHeart Podcast Network. I am really pleased to welcome my guest and good friend, Rachel Campos-Duffy. She is co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, New York Times bestselling author of All American Patriotism, celebrating 250 years of America's greatness, and the star mom of the Great American Road Trip. Rachel, welcome, and thank you for joining me on Newt's World.
Well, thank you, Newt. I'm so happy to be in Newt's World. Speaker, you came to Wisconsin back in 2010, and I still have a picture of you surrounded by all my kids. Some of them were up in a tree, I think, as well. I'm in Wausau, Wisconsin. You came in very early to help support my husband, Sean, in his first congressional race. And you, Rudy Giuliani, those who came in early when Sean was so struggling just to get any kind of, help in that race. And we're just always so grateful to you. And I just remember being so starstruck when you came to little old Wausau, Wisconsin. And again, I always be eternally grateful for your help in that.
I remember fondly being with you all. And frankly, you have enough children that they form a political crowd by themselves. And I remember we had a lot of fun that day, but I have to say, both with you and Sean, you've had remarkable careers, and they just continue to grow and develop. And I want to start with your new book, which, debuted at number 3 on the New York Times nonfiction bestseller list, All American Patriotism, celebrating 250 years of America's greatness. I'm very curious, what inspired you to write this particular book as we approach our 250th birthday?
Well, the birthday itself inspired me in that I think it's time to use that birthday to turn the page on what I think has been, several decades and generations of denigrating our country, our history, our founders, who we are as a people, and this narrative of shame that's been foisted on our children. And I think I'm Gen X speaker, so I would say probably my generation, maybe a little bit of the older millennials who grew up in the 90s might be the last generation that was raised in a pretty much as kids through the curriculum, through the culture, believing that America is a really great country. And then as they grew older, finding out it had its troubles, it had situations in the past and its history and even in the present, but that we could fix that through a prism of love for this country, that we were fixing it because we loved the country. And that's why we wanted to make it better. But then came Barack Obama, who I think embodied what was already happening in curriculum and the culture, thanks to Howard Zinn and other influences. And they said, no, we want to fundamentally transform the country. We want to tear down its history, tear down its statues. And I think we're starting to wake up from this woke fever. The effects are still there. We're seeing patriotism between levels absolutely collapse among young people. But I do think that we're starting to break that fever, and people are wanting to understand this country again and figure out why people my age and older love this country so much and want to fight so hard to restore her.
One of the things you did, and I always admire your sort of energy and enthusiasm, and which you bring to the show every time you're on there. One of the clever things you did is you asked a lot of your colleagues at Fox to share what America means to them. Were there any reflections that surprised you or gave you a new perspective on patriotism?
I asked an array of hosts at Fox to write an essay for the book, to become a chapter, to go, why do you love America? What does it mean to you? And what I loved about how it turned out, and it turned out even better than I thought it would, is just how regional this country is. So, Will Cain and Lawrence Jones, you read their chapters and it's all Texas, right? And then you read Tomi Lahren and she's talking about ranching, and you read Dana Perino and she's got this Western sort of sensibility about her as a Western woman. And then you read Ainsley Earhardt and she's in South Carolina, and there's so much charm and Southern belle sort of, essence dripping from her chapter. And then you read Jimmy Fallon, who's talking about Long Island, and it's totally different. And then you read Sean with his Midwestern, because I included Sean. He's the only current non-Fox host in the book. And you just get this sense, this pluribus et unum sense about America, that we're a regional country. We still, thank God, Starbucks hasn't destroyed yet the regional cultures that are still so prevalent in America. And yet the thread that unites everybody is their love for America. So I loved that part about it. And I think people will really appreciate that.
I have to ask you, you got Sean to be the non-current Fox person. Your story of the two of you getting together, I think, is very interesting and very different. You were both on MTV's Road Rules, and then they had an all-star package. And the two of you meet while you're doing television on a reality show, and then you're still doing television. What did you first think? If I remember correctly, he was doing something as sort of a lumberjack, and that was his thing.
Yeah. He's a lumberjack athlete. So Sean is from Wisconsin, from northern Wisconsin. And there are lumberjacks in his family that date back generations. They came from Ireland through Canada down to Wisconsin, and they worked in the lumber industry. They were sawyers, and also they were farmers. And in Sean's hometown is the home of the world champion lumberjack athletic event in the world. It's the World Championships every summer. And so they have sort of turned into athletic events all these skills that the lumberjacks, in the northern parts of America would do, in the lumber camps. So there's log rolling, and there's axe throwing, and there's sawing. And then the biggest event, the most dangerous event, is the tree climb. And they literally scale with a rope a 60-foot tree and a 90-foot tree, and they basically free fall down. And when I met Sean, he was a 3-time world champion speed climber on those trees. And I think that was sort of like his gimmick that got him onto the MTV show. And then we both did Real World, he in Boston, me in San Francisco. And then there was this reunion show on Road Rules, which you mentioned. And that's where we met, on this travel adventure show, sort of representing each of our casts. They picked one person from each of the first 5 casts. And we met on this thing, and, I kind of liked him. He really liked me, Newt. And I wasn't so sure, because I was this Latina girl from the Southwest. He seemed kind of, a little goofy and from the Midwest. He's from a rural town, and he has that sensibility about him. He still does. And then we sort of dated. It didn't work out. And then we went to breakfast, and I thought, I'm going to keep him in the friend zone. I want to make sure this isn't awkward, because we're probably going to see each other in the future through all these MTV events. And I just want to keep it friendly with us so he's not angry when he sees me. And we went out to breakfast, and that breakfast ended up being like a 3 or 4 hour breakfast. And at the end of the breakfast, I said, I think I want to marry you. I love you. And he thought I was nuts, because he'd been chasing me for months and I was not interested. And all of a sudden I said, I want to marry him. And we've been together ever since.
I was going to say, that was a pretty big jump.
It was kind of crazy.
I really want to never see you again, except maybe we could get married. When you think about this modern world we live in, you came up through MTV. I think people don't appreciate how open to talent the American system is.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. Speaker, when Sean was elected into Congress, in that election that you helped him get elected in 2010, he was the very first person to have been in a reality television show that was elected to a national office. And actually, when President Trump was elected, Sean went to see him in the Oval Office, and he told President Trump the story about how he was the first and President Trump was the second reality TV person. And I'll tell you what, President Trump did not like that story at all. He did not, because President Trump likes to be the first at everything.
You did something which was pretty courageous. You have 9 children, and you convinced your husband, in between being Secretary of Transportation, to jump in the car and go around on the Great American Road Trip. What was your vision for doing that?
Well, actually, President Trump had told each cabinet member, he was really excited when he was elected that he was going to get the anniversary of 250 years. And the America 250 organization had been planning for 10 years. And I think it was kind of taken over by a lot of wokesters. And it was sort of going to be an apology tour and not really a celebration of just how remarkable and exceptional this country was. And so when President Trump was elected and realized that anniversary was going to fall under his purview, he said to each cabinet member, I want you to find a very special way that matches your department to celebrate America. And so Sean has very fond personal memories of road tripping because that's how his family traveled, as did mine when we were growing up. We didn't take airplanes. We pretty much, for the most part, jumped in cars and road tripped if we were going to go anywhere. And he has very, very beautiful, fond memories of that. And so he said, I'm going to bring back the Great American Road Trip. And that was the idea. We were going to start with some TikTok videos and maybe, a couple locations and turn them into TikTok videos. We were discussing earlier, we met on a reality television show. The decision was made, well, why don't we go back to our roots? And for 20 years, we'd been asked to do a reality television show about our family. And we've always resisted. We've never wanted to expose our kids in that way. And it just was never anything we wanted to do. And we've been asked, probably a dozen times by very big production companies and networks, would you do a reality television show with us? And we every time, no, for 20 years. And so we thought, you know what, why don't we get back this time? We'll do just 5 episodes. We'll pick some really iconic places, Philadelphia, Yellowstone, Grand Canyon, South Carolina. We'll bring our kids along and we'll sort of, through our telling this story, because as you know, we're wired for stories. We'll tell the stories. We'll show the fights in the car and the different things that are happening in our lives at this time. And just 5 episodes and we'll put it out there and we'll show America what this country looks like. Because Sean's motto in this was, to love America, you got to see America. And he said that because so many people nowadays are living their lives through their phones. And they're not getting out there. They're not seeing how beautiful the country is. I don't know who's selling them. It's Bill Gates or whatever. They're putting these virtual glasses on and saying, you don't even have to leave your house. You just put these virtual glasses on and you can feel like you're at, the Grand Canyon. And it's like, no, there's nothing like actually seeing the Grand Canyon. But just as importantly, you mentioned we have 9 kids. There's been a crisis in the family. And so this idea of putting families in a vehicle, taking away everybody's phones, rolling down the windows and singing songs and playing music and fighting and all the things that happen in the car is really what everybody ends up remembering when they're 45 years old about what happened when they were 9 and they went on that road trip. In fact, Sean, in his chapter in my book, talks about a trip that he took to the Grand Canyon with his mom and his siblings. And every summer they would do something. They would go to Florida. They would go to the Grand Canyon. They might go to California. And the way it worked, because Sean is the 10th of 11 kids. So his dad was a lawyer in their little town. And so he would say,
wait a second, hold on. I don't think I knew this. So you end up with 9 children, marrying a guy who was the 10th of 11?
Yeah, good Irish Catholic family. If you think back, there was a time when, American Catholic families had that many kids. And my dad is one of 15 as well, Mexican Catholic. So, of course, I had 9. You had Mexican Catholic, Irish Catholic, Sean and I, there's no hope, right? We're going to end up with a lot of kids. So what Sean's dad would do is he would say, Carol, take the kids in the car, get to Florida, I got to work. And then he would fly out and meet them in Florida or California or wherever it is that they ended up vacationing in. And then he would spend a week there with the family. But Carol, Sean's mom, would do the drive. She was an at-home mom. She would do the drive with all the kids out. Well, Carol died about 2 years ago. She died a beautiful death, surrounded by all her kids. And it was a several month period of slow decline before she finally died. And what was beautiful about it is that there was a lot of time for all of her kids to come and see her, and they would share stories with her. And all the stories were around these road trips and around the journey to the place. And at the end, when Carol finally passed away, my father-in-law, Tom, said to his kids, in his 90s, And it's a really sad thing. But he said, I really now regret that I didn't get in the car, because he realized that's where all the action was. And so Sean was really passionate, has been very passionate about bringing back this great American road trip, not only because we have the most beautiful country in the world with the most remarkable landscapes, majestic landscapes, with the most incredible people and beautiful diners and Route 66, but also because he thinks families are getting more and more disconnected and that this road trip experience could bring us back together.
When we come back, Rachel shares the deeply personal story behind her patriotism. One of the most personal parts of your book is when you write, and I'm quoting you, "When I think about why I love America, I think about the American dream and how it saved my family." Tell us about that.
I told you that my father was one of 15, and he's the first generation born here in the United States. His parents came from Mexico, immigrated to a little copper mining town in the mountains of Arizona. That's where he was raised. And they were very, very, very poor. They had one green bike that all the siblings shared among all of them. And my father was so poor. The whole town was poor, but they were especially poor. There's a story my father tells us that you can tell, even though my dad's in his 80s, if he tells the story, you can still sense the pain in it. He was a little kid. He was in kindergarten, and somebody very cruelly, while he was in line at school, somebody very cruelly pulled his pants down. And in pulling his pants down, it revealed just the extent of their poverty, which was my father's was so poor, his family couldn't afford underwear. And everyone knew that. And that's probably why that dumb kid did that to my dad. It elicited a lot of shame for my dad. But out of that poverty, and out of that experience of growing up in this family, my grandfather was extremely resourceful. My dad and his brothers became very resourceful too. And so my father would go into the mountains of Arizona and pull cactus leaves off of the cactus plants in the wild. And they would take the needles out and they would peel the cactus and wash it and dice it, put it in buckets, and they would sell it door to door. His father taught them how to make candy out of this. These are called nopales. They would make homemade candy and sell that door to door. But my father also became, at the age of 9, 10, he became an apprentice to a piñata maker in his town. And eventually my dad learned how to make a piñata and started his own business at 12 years old. He's a creative guy. And he would make these beautiful piñatas, and his mother would take them down to the market and sell them, and he would make money. And he would give money to his parents, and then he would have money himself if the circus came to town or if he wanted to go see a movie. And so my dad is just this hardworking, incredible guy. And when he graduated from high school, the opportunities available to a Mexican-American boy at that time was to either, in the 50s, to either go into the military or work in the mines. And my dad decided to join the military. And when he went into the military, he got stationed abroad at one very early assignments. That's where he met my mom in Spain. But my dad would work at a Chinese restaurant at night. He always was trying to make more money for his little family. And then at one point he realized that he needed an education if he was going to really get this family. And he and my mom, what they wanted was to get us into the middle class and into this opportunity that America represented. And so most of my childhood, my dad was at night school. So he would go to work on the base, and then he would go to night school, and he earned his degree. And when he eventually retired after almost 30 years in the military, he went and used his GI Bill and got a master's degree and became a teacher. He and my mom taught herself English. My mom went to college. When I was in college, she actually went to college with me, which I was mortified about, but she did, and got her degree just a year after I did. And then she became a teacher. And so they really, through examples, showed us that this country was a land of opportunity, and that for us, education was going to be that way to get ourselves out of that. And my parents, they had so much dignity about them, so much gratitude for this country. They always told us that we were lucky to be Americans, that we were blessed that we were born here. They made sure we learned English first. I speak Spanish, you know that, Newt, but my parents were adamant that we would not have an accent, that we would not have anything that would hold us back from the American dream that they sacrificed everything for the next generation. And so, I mean, that's how they saved us. I mean, I look over the border. I look at the people that have come across the border illegally in the last, 4 years of Joe Biden. And I realized that could have been me, trying to get over to the land of opportunity. I don't think people should do it illegally. I certainly understand the sentiment, though. And I'm really glad and blessed that my grandparents came here and that I'm born here. And I'll never take that for granted. And I think part of why I wanted to write the book is that, Newt, I'm sick of these Marxists, these progressives, these Bolsheviks who have taken over our curriculum and are filling children with lies about our country when we all know that we have the golden ticket. I mean, this is the most coveted citizenship in the world. And yet we have several generations of kids who are growing up with disdain from Christopher Columbus all the way to George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and all the way through. I mean, you're a historian. I would love to hear what you think about this in terms of just this Howard Zinn Marxist history that is now accounting for more than 70% of all the curriculum is Howard Zinn curriculum, K through 12.
Well, I always tell people that Reagan defeated communism in Moscow, but he lost to it at Stanford. Our generation now has the obligation of going back in and taking out all the people who are anti-American and recognizing that they shouldn't be teaching, their books shouldn't be getting used. And these people, they're not confused. They are actively anti-American. It's amazing. Coming up, we're going to discuss why Rachel believes America has gone from celebrating its history to questioning it, and why she thinks patriotism is making a comeback. When you think about it, there was a point where suddenly patriotism ceased to be the natural behavior, and we got into the cycle, particularly on the campuses, and then that moved to the places like the New York Times, where to be a genuine open patriot was almost to be ostracized. And I think it would be very hard on some of these campuses, if you were openly patriotic, to get tenure. You know that this is an extraordinary country. And when you think about that, I just read a very interesting study of people like Mamdani, who are all personally wealthy. These are left-wing inheritors of money who are now living a life of luxury, morally trying to tell the rest of us that we should feel bad. But they don't feel bad because they're personally wealthy. When you talk to people on Fox, do you get a sense that there's, with this 250th birthday, that there's an increased awareness of patriotism?
First of all, you're 100% right about the Mamdani, these trust fund babies. And by the way, you saw that even, with the Bolsheviks, it was also the children of the elites who led that revolution. It's oftentimes the children of privilege who have the luxury of being able to dabble in these theories like communism, like Marxism, that, end up, turning out to be hellscapes, especially for those in the middle class and below. So that's absolutely true. And I think New York City is going to really rue the day they elected this man. It's deteriorating quickly. With regards to patriotism and the celebration of 250, I had so much hope. I still do. And I think the fact that my book is doing so well on the New York Times gives me a lot of hope. I was really upset last week when I saw that we had this America 250 concert that should have been nonpartisan. I'm so mad at Hollywood. I mean, this country is divided right now on the eve of 250 for lots of reasons. Even the war is dividing us. But we're turning 250 and we're still exceptional. Since 1776, we still are an exceptional country. We still are, as I said, the most coveted citizenship in the world. No one has taken more advantage of the privileges and the American dream than American celebrities and musicians. And they could have really led the charge in going, we're going to really bring this country together, at the Great American Fair that was going to happen in July, and really from across the aisle, put on an incredible concert, because there's nothing like American pop culture. There's nothing like American music. We're the home of rock and roll. We're the home of rap. We're the home of pop culture and pop music. And they could have really done it. Where's Taylor Swift? Where's all these people that make millions of dollars off of this system? Why wouldn't they donate their time to celebrate America? Instead, they want to give the middle finger to President Donald Trump. And in the process, what they're doing is missing a real opportunity to bring this country together. I hope that the things that President Trump is doing, whether it's the UFC fight or in August, there's the Grand Prix that my husband is putting together with Fox Sports to do a remarkable historical Indy race around the U.S. Capitol, something that hasn't been done since Thomas Jefferson did a horse buggy race around the U.S. Capitol in honor of our 25th. So there's some really remarkable events. But boy, am I disappointed that the left is like on the 250th anniversary saying, we're taking our ball home. We're not going to play.
You also make a point that we've seen vandalism of statues. We've seen the National Archives, I assume this was under Biden, actually labeled the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence with harmful language alerts. Did they ever call in the person who did that and ask them what they meant?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, that was one of the most egregious things that ever happened. And we should know the name of whoever was the director. I don't actually know the name of whoever was running the archives at that time. I mean, it's practically treasonous, honestly. It's just disgusting. They also defaced Plymouth Rock, Christopher Columbus. I'm glad that President Trump is making Columbus great again. I guess defaming of some of the greatest figures of our time. It's horrible. And a lot of kids, like I said, they absolutely believe it. Every single Columbus Day, I have to deprogram my kids from what's being said about Christopher Columbus and about George Washington on President's Day and on and on and on. And it seems like people forget even the issue of the Civil War. I mean, I had people upset at me because on Juneteenth Day, I wrote a tweet that said, if you're celebrating Juneteenth Day, you're welcome. And then I signed it, the Republican Party. And you wouldn't believe the liberals who came after me, wanted me fired and reprimanded for saying that. I mean, we've robbed our children of history. Like they literally only know this Marxist version.
It was, after all, the Democrats who defended slavery and the Democrats who defended segregation. It's a different world, but I just want to say for everybody who listens to this, that Rachel is this good every time she's on TV. You have added so much, and what you're doing is so cool. Your new book, I want to remind people, All American Patriotism, celebrating 250 years of America's greatness, is available now on Amazon and in bookstores everywhere. It's already a New York Times bestseller. And I want to encourage our listeners to watch The Great American Road Trip on YouTube. It's a remarkable celebration, and your family is a remarkable family. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Speaker. You are an American treasure. You always have been.
Thank you to my guest, Rachel Campos-Duffy. Newt's World is produced by Gingrich 360 and iHeartMedia. Our executive producer is Garnsey Sloan. Our researcher is Rachel Peterson. Special thanks to the team at Gingrich 360. If you've been enjoying Newt's World, I hope you'll go to Apple Podcasts and both rate us with 5 stars and give us a review so others can learn what it's all about. Join me on Substack at Gingrich360.net. I'm Newt Gingrich. This is Newt's World.